Hello, it's good to be back again. I don't have much time, but I wanted to share a few more things with you before I actually go. I told you in the first video segment that I would be coming back and sharing a few things with you to actually introduce myself. Again, my name is Willie Campbell, and my whole purpose for this is to share my story with you after 33 years of incarceration from 1986 up until May 2019. I went in prison as a juvenile 2 weeks after my 17th birthday. And I actually was released from prison on parole, lifetime parole, like most of the juvenile lifers, um, in May of 2019. So what I wanted to tell you, the title of this video is that your beginning does not have to be your end. And my purpose for that is to explain to you that, going in so young, there were steps that actually led to my incarceration. So this whole series doesn't actually begin with the incarceration, even though I'll be interjecting every now and then. And if you just follow me, I try to make all my points connect with one another. So, I mean, I couldn't put my whole life story down in a book, and I doubt very seriously I'd be able to tell you all the ins and outs of things that would probably arouse your curiosity um, in one video or a series of videos. So, I just want to just share my story with you as best as I possibly can, as natural as I possibly can. Everything is unscripted. I haven't written anything down or anything like that. So um, that's where I'm at with this. So for me, I believe that the road to my incarceration didn't actually begin the moment that I made the decision to step out and commit the crime that I committed to lead me to prison. Where I actually want to start with you at is something that's a very, very serious concern of mine. That is child abuse. I don't have any children, but what I have learned from what I have endured at the hands of my parents was how not to treat those who trust me for nothing other than love, protection, and proper guidance in life. I didn't receive a lot of that. What I received in turn um, was a lot of pain, heartbreak, heartache, spiritual, emotional, and physical abuse at almost every turn. And that abuse actually set me on the path to going to prison. It set me on the path to responding to the world outside of where I'd actually come from in an extremely negative way. And so I always encourage parents to mind how you treat your children, to mind what you say to them, to mind what you do to them, to mind the influence that you believe is best for them, because eventually children do what you've done. They grow up and they realize they have a mind of their own and that the rest of their lives actually belong to them. And then they, in essence, actually deter away from what their parents have actually tried to embed and ingrain and nurture within them, because their life, they didn't come into this world to be owned by their parents. They came into this world to be properly guided and nourished by their parents so that they could surpass their parents. And in that surpassing, on that journey, there are going to be things that that child is going to have to go through, both in their childhood years, their teenage years, their young adult years, all the way up until they, meet the final destination for all human beings in the grave. And the only thing that they're going to have to hold on to will not be any material things, but the lessons that have been learned and the hope that in all they're given, they gave their best and they gave their love, which is something that we should all be focused on. So again, I want to begin sharing my journey with you, not with the prison experience, although the prison experience served to be a great learning experience for me to become the man that I am right now. I'm not a guy that has any stories to tell you about any horrendous acts that took place with me or anything like that. I didn't endure any of those things. The prison environment that I was in wasn't set up like that. But one of the things that I had in common with the over 5,600 other people who were incarcerated in the Louisiana prison penal system was the one thing that we did not spend a lot of time discussing in the Louisiana penal system, and that was our childhood upbringing. We tend to brush that kind of thing aside as if it was a norm here in America for children to be physically, emotionally, and spiritually treated the way they were. And the problem with that is that to glamorize that kind of activity even at the expense of your own experience, what it does is that it perpetuates the same ill and keeps a system like the U.S. penal system as overwhelmingly overpopulated as it is, because certain issues that actually begin in the home, in the lives of children, don't actually get discussed. Well, maybe more today than it did when I was coming up. Okay, whereas beating a child with an extension cord, a stick, punching on adolescents and kicking them and otherwise abusing them by calling them out of their names, or constantly feeding them self-defeating talk. You're not going to be anything. You're not going to amount up to anything. You're never going to accomplish anything. You're stupid. You're dumb, cussing them out and stuff like that. These things begin to set a pattern, the seed patterns of behavior that later define a great number of years of the individual's life that they will go through, either doing something to harm themselves or to act out because they aren't strong enough to act out in the home. Then they would actually go outside of the home and act out in that way. And I'm not speaking from any learned psychological point of view or anything like that. If I am any kind of expert in any of the things that I'll be sharing with you, it is only based on my personal experience, observations from where I've come to where I am right now. So I don't have any degrees. I don't have any degrees or anything like that. All I have with you is the one thing that I can share honestly with you, and that's my own personal experience. So what I'll be saying is actually coming from my own personal experiences, what I've learned. But again, I want to go and tell you that in the home is actually where the path to criminal activity actually begin for me. In the home is where the pattern of criminal activity actually began with me. Now, looking at me as a child back in those days, I would have to say that the first look that I want to share with you is the look that actually took place when I was a adolescent, and the one person that I love so much was actually taken away from me. She passed with a disease at that time that was called lupus. And back in the early 70s, there wasn't much known about lupus. So my mother, in essence, suffered all the way to the grave because of the fact that there was no treatment for the disease. And if it did, in fact, exist, she wasn't treated with whatever medical assistance that she could have possibly received. And that was primarily based on the fact that during that time, in the small little country town that I came from in Texas, racism was abundant, and that's something that, unfortunately, we are still working on as citizens on the face of this planet, not just in this country alone, but the world over. And because of that prejudice that existed at that time, my mother actually suffered to the grave. I didn't understand what was going on around me at the time in reference to my mom. One thing that I do know is that I don't have any memories of her abusing me or beating on me or taking advantage of me or pushing me away or pushing me to the side or doing anything to harm me. All I have are memories of her pouring out her overwhelming love on me, because she knew from having been told by the doctors that she actually didn't have much time to live. So long story short, mom passed, they buried her somewhere. To this day, I still don't know where my mom is buried, and none of my family members are able to actually help me in that regard. But I believe that God is all powerful, God is all knowing, God is all wise, and that some way, somehow, I am going to find the resting place of my mother. But back to the childhood experience, because I have to be brief but punctual. Brief but clear is what I want to say. So I wound up with my father, who was enlisted in the U.S. Air Force at the time, and he was married to the lady who became my stepmother. Stood in the place of my mother, and I was not her child. So I'm going to go in depth with all of this later on as well, because I believe that a lot of the treatment that occurred with me was taking place because, one, I was my parents' first child, and no one gave them a book and said, hey, read this book and it's going to tell you how to raise Willie Campbell III. None of us are ever given a book that tells us how, excuse me, we can actually raise our individual children, because children are different, and the process of rearing a child is different for everyone. So in all actuality, I think that I personally think now, like I said, looking back and observing the path that my life has taken, the journey that I've been on that led me to this point right now where I'm able to share my experiences with the world, had a lot to do with the fact that I was not their firstborn. I was not their firstborn. I was not my stepmother's firstborn child. And what she wanted was a life with my father that would be uniquely specific. And what I mean by uniquely specific is that there, I believe, was a wish within her that I had not been firstborn, or, perhaps not even born at all. Because then my mother, there would have been a concern for my mother passing and she having to take on the burden of actually rearing me to as her own. And I can't begin to tell you the burden that any step parent, mother or father, actually endures in a situation like that, when their hope is one thing, but what they're handed is another kind of reality. Their hope is that they can establish a family unit with the person that they're with. But the reality of the situation is that in most instances, when people hook up together, there's other quote unquote baggage that they're bringing with them. And in this particular instance, my father brought along the responsibility for me. And so she was had to deal with taking me in, me calling her mom, and her I have personally never heard her tell anyone that I was her son. She has introduced me as Bill, which is what my family affectionately refers to me as, Bill. That's what she's done. She affectionately introduced me as Bill. So one of the things that I noticed is that mom didn't, I should say, give me what I was expecting to receive. And I'm not angry with her or upset with her because of it. But what I do understand is that she probably did everything that she possibly could. And so in that light, I love her for it, and I am grateful for her having done the best that she possibly could. So, what can you do? So I want to tell you that when we are mistreating children, what we're actually doing is setting them up for failure for the most part. And when we do that, what we tend to do is make ourselves responsible for how that child is going to behave. And in that, we have to remember that it's not the child's fault, because the child is incapable of determining how they are going to be treated by the people who have promised to love them. So what to do? Well, in my experience, what happened was the household became an abusive household for me. I was made to feel guilty a lot of times. I was seldom ever told that I did anything good. It was a controlling environment, whereas my views and opinions about how I thought and felt about the world around me as an adolescent was judged more than anything else. And I wasn't given a fair opportunity to really express myself in the way that I could have as a youth. Now, I don't want to say that it was so abusive to the point to where I hate my stepmother for anything that took place, because I do not. I don't want to say that I was abused in such a way as to where I feel like anything that she did to me, or my father perpetuated upon me should come back to them, because I don't feel that way either. What I do feel is that the abuse continued so much to where when I was 14 years old, something inside me clicked and I physically turned on my father. And when I did, well, there's a reason why God made children and God made adults. Father put a whooping on me from here. But something was taking place inside of me. Something was saying, I'm tired. Something was saying, this is not the way this is supposed to be. Something was saying, you can do better by me, but you choose not to. Something was telling me that. And so what I did was, the base commander had my father to get rid of me and send me to relatives in Texas, who later, sent me to relatives in Louisiana. And I was given some freedom to where when I stepped off the porch, not having a proper guide, not having anyone to listen to my concerns, forced me to act out. And this is what I mean by act out. I've always been a charismatic kind of individual. And even as a child, I was extremely charismatic. So no matter what school I attended or whatever, because of how I carried myself, and I became a leader amongst other children and tended to influence them in ways. I wasn't like them. I was different. I thought different. I saw the world different. And so that was my way of believing that through my popularity with the other kids, I could begin to define some sort of self-expression. And at 14 years old, 15 years old, 16 years old, 17 years old, if you've been there, then you know exactly what I'm saying. Those are ages in our freshman to senior high school years and on into our early 20s, where we believe we actually have everything figured out. And without a proper guide, things don't tend to go as well as we would hope that they would. So again, I said I was going to make this short because there's going to be a series of these videos. But I wanted to begin with the childhood experience. And so where I am at right now is with the point in my life to where at 16 years old, things had stopped functioning. I'm not going to say properly because I didn't know that I was functioning improperly. What I do know is that I was extremely angry on the inside. I do know that because of all the abuse from my adolescent years and then going to my stepmother and my father, because of all the abuse and because of all the heartache and pain, I was extremely angry inside and didn't know what to do with that energy. I didn't know what to do with that energy. I didn't know how to open up and talk to anyone. Because as a male child at that particular age, with the popularity that I established for myself, expounding on my situation and then crying about it and sharing it with someone else came off to me as being weak, not because I actually thought it was weak, but because it was something that was presented to me as a child, that as a leader of other children, I had to paint the picture of unbreakable, of being unbreakable and strong, because I wanted them to continue to look up to me, because I was searching for something. I was trying to search for my own identity. I didn't realize it then. And it was the prison experience, which I will get with you later on about, that actually brought about the journey that actually began the shaping of my manhood, the molding of my thought processes, the categorizing and being able to organize my thoughts, because I surrounded myself with people in prison who were able to help me toward that end. They were able to help me toward that end. So that's really what I want to tell you right now, is that my journey actually began, as far as the prison environment is concerned, my journey began toward that experience in the home. How I was treated at home, because I wasn't strong enough to defend myself or do anything about it, spilled over and exploded when I was a teenager in high school. That's when it actually just came out. And as a result, I found myself incarcerated in the largest prison in the United States. Okay, so I'm going to go get ready for work right now. I hope you enjoyed this. Like I said, there'll be more. I'll be back on here tomorrow, and we will continue with chapter 3. Thank you very much.